What we have today is a selection of, I'm going to do 2 pokés for you actually. In the recipe, I put ahi or tofu. We had some questions earlier about other ingredients that you might be able to add. And you can go to any of your local supermarkets or fish markets and see the wide variety of ingredients they use in poke. So it can be poached shrimp or crawfish, or some people even use crab. Salmon's popular. It can be soy sauce based or mayo based, different things like that. So for our ingredients today that make up the body of the poke, it's going to be ahi or the tofu. We've got some onions. We've got some cilantro, and I love cilantro, so that's part of why I've included that in here. If you don't like cilantro and you wanted to use Italian parsley or no fresh herbs at all, that's sort of up to you. I've got some chili flakes, some onions, either red or white. It's up to you. You could use shallot as well. You could use any type of onion that you like. Some avocado. It is avocado season, and they are healthy, a good source of fat, and very flavorful this time of year, so we have that. And then cucumber. If we look at the sauce options that we have here, I put on the recipe that you can purchase pre-made ones. So here, this is a shoyu-based poke sauce, so everything is mixed in. Today, we're making it from scratch, but if you want a little bit more convenient product, you can go with something like this. Here's a kimchi-flavored poke sauce. So if you're a fan of kimchi and you love that spicy flavor, this might be the sauce you go for. Today, I picked up some low-sodium soy sauce, and I use the sesame oil, the toasted sesame seed oil. I also saw these on the shelf. This is a wasabi sauce, which is basically a wasabi mayo and a sriracha mayo. We're not going to use those today, but they look great. I'm going to use them later in the kitchen, so I wanted to grab those. And then here's a pre-made Hawaiian salt that's made for poke. And then, of course, you need the acidity in there, so we've got the citrus. In this case, I'm using lime. If you wanted to use lemon or something else, you could do that as well. And then over here on the garnish side, we've got the chilies. These are locally grown from produce. I got these at Times today. Looks more like a Thai chili to me, but you can get any kind of chili that you like. If you want something a little less hot, you might even go with a jalapeno. It's sort of up to you. Green onions, of course. I bought some Radish Sprouts because I love these. Many of you might use these. I might put these on at the end for garnish, but if you like the flavor of radish and daikon and a little bit of spiciness to it, you'll love this sprout. Some sesame seeds for a sprinkle at the end, and then I've got the fresh cilantro here, and I just had my chef Steve grind up some kukui nut. So that's popular in a lot of pokés. You don't want to use a lot of it, but it is a good flavoring agent, and we're going to garnish a little bit on top when we get to that point at the end as well. So that being said, those cover the ingredients, and when you come and approach a dish like poke or any main course or soup, think about it in terms of components. You know, what are you going to use for the sauce? What are you going to use as the main ingredient? What are you going to use for the garnish? And then final seasoning at the end. It works really, really well. So I just wanted to demonstrate as we get into the main body of the ingredients, a couple of basic cuts, because I know some folks are following along and cutting as we go. Maybe you've prepped some things in advance if you wanted to make this particular dish, or you're just watching. But this is a Japanese cucumber. So what I recommend if you're getting Japanese, or if you're getting the English, which I put on the recipe, the long, slender one with a thin skin, you don't necessarily even have to peel it at all. But what I did earlier was striped it. So I was taking off about every other stroke, taking off a piece of the skin. So you leave a little bit of the color and a little bit of the texture, but it's not too thick and it's not overwhelming. So that's one thing that I do with this particular cucumber. And then I cut it in half, take the ends off, and then I split it down the side here. Now, what we do want to do is also remove the seeds. So we don't want all those seeds in there. For certain recipes, you might want to keep them. If we do a cucumber lemonade, a lot of the times I'll leave that in there. I would just take a spoon, scrape those off, and that removes the excess moisture as well. And for this particular size recipe, we're only going to need probably about a half of one because this was a really large cucumber. So then I just need to cut it into bite-sized pieces. I have a little brown spot here. You might be able to see. I'm going to take that off. Discard that. And then it's up to you to decide what size you want. We're going to talk about that with the tuna as well. I just like smaller bite-sized pieces. So I'm going to cut it first lengthwise. A couple strips like that. Turn it and then come back. And cut the smaller pieces. All right. Then this can go into the bowl. In the interest of time, I've already cut some of the items, the chili flakes or the chili peppers, the cilantro, it's already been cut. The onions I've cut, but I'm also going to add some purple onions in here. So if I take a little bit of a peeled onion here, here's a trick to cutting these. You want these nice and thin. I prefer to have it nice and thin. Even though I love onions, I don't want too thick of a chunk. It can overpower the flavor of the poke. So when I'm doing a rounded cut and a julienne, I'll always come in from the side and try to do it as thin as possible, sort of following the contour of the onion. And since I've already got some onion in the dish, I can go with just a little bit less. So I'm going to take that amount there and add that. Okay, so we have now our vegetables in there. The next thing is the avocado. What I've done here, this one had a bruise in it where I dropped it, so I cut that part out, but basically just split the avocado in half and remove the pit. And then I'm going to take my knife and I score it while it's in the shell. And then I'll take a spoon when I get ready here, and I'm going to scoop it right out into the bowl. Okay. So if you take a chef spoon or a large spoon like this size, you should be able to get right in there, remove the meat of the avocado, and get it right into the bowl. Same thing with the other half. And it depends on the size avocado you have. If it's a large one, you might only want a half. If it's a small one, then you might want the other one. You have the front camera on? Can you switch to that, please? All right. And then here we have the poke, main ingredient, the primary part. This is the tuna. And I wanted to just point out that everybody likes different size cuts. For me, I don't like the huge chunks. A lot of times you'll get poke that'll have 1-inch cubes for the fish. And I like to go about half-inch cubes. So that's what I diced this up in already. So that goes in. And now I can move on to my dressing. So I'm not going to use one of the pre-made ones. I'm going to go with something fresh. So I'm going to need my soy sauce. And this is up to you to determine like the amount. So you can always add a little bit more, but you can't take away. So I'll add a little bit there, a little bit of the sesame oil. And I love the flavor of the toasted sesame oil. That works great. And then we're using the Hawaiian salt that we make here, similar to the blend that we had last week, but it's got some chili flakes and a few other items in it as well to give us a little bit of the salt. Now you don't need a whole lot because you have the soy sauce. The soy sauce is providing some sodium. But like I mentioned, this is a low sodium one, so it works out pretty well. And then we just need to mix it together. And I can sort of tell by looking at it that I want a little bit more soy sauce in there. It will absorb it a little bit, and that flavor will come through as it penetrates inside of the fish. So I'm trying to be gentle because I've got avocado. It was nice and ripe, but I don't want to mash it. I still want it to be somewhat whole. Now, ideally, I would then put this in the refrigerator. Since I don't have a refrigerator out here, I'm just going to put it on ice temporarily and let that sit. I'll stir it again in another minute or two, but I want to make sure that we have the flavors absorbing inside of the fish and the other ingredients. And I can set that aside. I don't know, are there any questions? Well, it depends. That's a great question. How many people? For me, it would probably be 2 people, but for some folks at home, I've set most of these recipes up for 4 people, and the portion sizes range from 4 to 7 ounces, depending on what the dish is throughout the series of this program.
Daniels, I don't know if this is relevant, but
yes.
Somebody, Ken in would like to know, how do you sharpen your knives? And Esther Ueda would like to know, if you were using tofu instead of ahi, how large would you be cutting the pieces?
Oh, that's a great question. Sharpening the knife. Actually, we should probably do a knife skills class, maybe. That would be great. Today I did sharpen it because the knife was starting to get a little bit dull. I just use a stone in the kitchen, and then I have a steel. But next class, I'll bring out a steel and I'll demonstrate that for everybody. Okay.
And then how big to cut the tofu?
And then I'm glad you asked. Look at that. Oh my gosh, we're good to go. So I wanted to make sure that I showed you guys the tofu as well. So if we go overhead here, I'll be able to show you guys the perspective of all the ingredients that go into the tofu. So that one's a little bit different. I can go slightly larger because the texture, can you get the overhead camera? Slightly different because the texture is softer. So I don't mind a little bit bigger piece, but for the tofu, I've drained it. I've soaked the moisture out of it, and I'm using the firm tofu here. And then I cut it into about 3/4 inch cubes. And then that goes in the bowl. So there's still a little bit of moisture. And remember, if you were here last week, we talked about how the tofu has a lot of moisture inside of it, and we want to draw that moisture out with towels so that when we come back and add the other ingredients, it will reabsorb it and make it all the more flavorful. So I've got this stuff already prepared: cucumber, avocado, the cilantro, the shoyu, sesame oil, the chili flakes, and I've got a little bit of lime here. I added the lime last minute on the tuna because I don't want it to cook the fish. So I just squeezed it on top. I'm going to toss it here in a moment. So I've got that.
Dan,
I've got the red onions.
Somebody is asking, does it matter if you use Chinese versus Japanese or Thai soy sauce? Like, does it matter what kind of soy sauce? And then Violet is asking, can you add sesame seeds in addition to sesame oil?
Yeah. It does not matter necessarily which one you use, and you can substitute with the different parsleys if you want. Okay, so you can see here now I'm just tossing this lightly, and when I move to the plating and the garnishing, I'll be able to show you guys the sesame seeds. And then if you wanted to add your own touch to this, where you wanted to put in a red pepper or make it a little bit more colorful by adding something else, you could feel free to do that as well. All right. And the tofu will absorb the flavor and the dressing a little bit more quickly than the tuna will, because it has those pukas in it, and it's like a sponge. You've already extracted all the liquid. You've reabsorbed it, and it's ready to go pretty quickly. So this one will be ready almost instantly, although I do recommend you try to put it in the cooler to let it chill and then toss it one more time. And then if we have a moment, I just wanted to show this sort of as a base. I think I put down that you can use rice to serve it with. You can serve it with crackers. I have a few different examples here today, but what I did was I picked up some tabbouleh, and I don't know if you guys use this very often, but near the rice section of your supermarket, you'll find Near East has a lot of different types of grain-based items that you can purchase. You can get tabbouleh, you can get couscous, you can get quinoa, different things like this. This is really, really simple and easy to use. So I'll show you how it works. Basically, it was the bulgur and the spice packet put in there with 1 cup of boiling water. We let it set, and then you just come back and fluff it. And you can add to this then usually items like diced tomatoes, a little bit of lemon juice, and some oil. So I'm going to use avocado oil, just a touch in here. I'm going to add some diced tomatoes. And then Jackie Malley, my dear friend, today brought some fresh basil. So I'm going to take some fresh basil. You get the close up of that, please. And I'm just going to cut julienne strips and then come back a couple small bites. So this is a Middle Eastern dish, but it gives really good flavor to go with the tofu. So I'm going to add that to the bowl. A little bit of lemon juice right here. Catching the seeds, running it through my fingers really quick. And then we just need to mix that. I'm sorry? You probably could. The thing with coconut oil is it tends, you don't want it to be too cold. It can set up and become firm. But yeah, absolutely. Your favorite oil can be substituted with almost any of these. All right, so that's a really nice little dish. And then we're going to come back here, and I'm going to serve this one with the tofu poke. So I have a little frond here that fell. We tend to collect these here on campus, and we wash them, scrub them down, run them through the dishwasher, line them with tea leaves, and then we use these for serving vessels. So I've got the tabbouleh that I can put a layer down inside. Sort of a cornucopia of sorts coming through. And then I'm going to give this one more toss here.
Dan, somebody's
And,
asking, can
yeah,
avocado
question?
oil be used?
Does the avocado impart the taste of avocado into the oil like sesame seed oil?
A little bit, yeah. It's very subtle, but it is there. Yeah, absolutely. So most all of your oils that you'll work with, especially nut oils, will get the flavor from that particular item. Walnut oil, pecan oil, things like that. And then I'm adding just a touch of our Hawaiian salt at the end, the last little toss. Yeah. And then I'm going to just pour it into the vessel here. Service. Now I can come back to the next part, which is basically the garnish. So I have a few items here that I went over earlier, the sesame seeds, the kukui nuts. You can kind of pick your own. If you have cilantro inside or some other herb and you wanted to utilize that herb then at the end to garnish it, you certainly could do that. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of kukui nut on top. And I really like these radish sprouts. I'm a big fan of radishes, so I've always enjoyed eating these. And if you've never used these before, they're not very expensive, but they're really flavorful, and they can complement a sandwich or any number of dishes. You can bring that out, and you just have to cut off and remove the roots and the seeds. So I'll just lay it on my cutting board, cut that end off.
And Dan, one of our participants is asking, is there a definition of poke?
Okay, I believe it means bite size.
Okay, because you're getting kind of exotic here. So it's bite size, yeah?
Yeah, and when you look at the components to this particular dish, it's almost, it can be like a salsa is the same thing. You have the tomatoes and then the spices and then the acidity that comes into it. Every chutney, every compote that you make is very, very similar in the same way, that has the same components to it. So it doesn't have to be exotic or fancy. It can be extremely simple. Maybe it's just the nice presentation of the bowl.
It's beautiful. Bonnie is asking, do radish sprouts have to be washed?
I always rinse all the produce. Everything you get today, you want to wash it. Even though it may be in a bag, it may be pre-washed, or it says that it's been washed. I think it's just better to be safe than sorry, and always wash and rinse your produce. Even the tea leaves were rinsed. Obviously, we run these through the dish machine. They work great, but you want to wash everything really well.
Thank you. And I just want to remind participants, if you have questions, you'll need to put it into the Q&A, because I understand several people have their hands raised, but we're not equipped with this webinar to take live questions. So please type your questions into the Q&A. Thank you.
And then I'm going to come back here, and you may have noticed I added the little bit of lime juice at the end before I set it on the ice there. Another little squeeze. Now I'm going to toss it one more time, and you can see, hopefully, that the soy sauce has been absorbed. You don't see a lot of sauce at the bottom or anything like that. So I'm actually going to hit it with just a tiny bit more. The last couple of turns. And that looks about where I want it to be. All right. And then I'll just plate this, and I've got a basic white plate. I put a few leaves of tea leaves down on the bottom, and I'm going to just slide that. Onto here. And then I recommended, I mean, you can eat it straight just like this, honestly. A lot of people really enjoy it. I enjoy eating it that way as well. But sometimes it's nice to have the texture. So I was looking today at the store for some whole wheat crackers. I could only find, Triscuit has about 20 different flavors these days. This is a cracked black pepper and olive oil. I bought a chia seed Triscuit. So there's lots of different flavors. They just didn't have like the multigrain whole wheat cracker that I was actually looking for. You'd probably find that at Whole Foods. A lot of times you'll also find it served with fried wonton skins. You could do a crostini style. Anything with some crispness and some crunch to it would be great. So I think for the most part, those are the general components. And just to sort of review, we're looking at the sauce that we want to utilize. In this case, it can be pre-purchased or made to order. We've got the main body of the poke. So in this case, it was the tofu with some avocado. In this case, it was the tuna with the avocado. And then we've got our garnish. So that's the last thing I need to do for this particular dish. And again, I'm going to hit this one with a little kukui nut, sprinkle, and some sesame seeds. And you can get black sesame seeds, white sesame seeds, toasted. They even have some nice wasabi ones. I was going to use those today, but they're a little too crazy. But they're green and they taste like wasabi. So everything, whether it's crackers or sauces or sesame seeds, seems to be getting elevated to a high level of variety when you're going to the store and shopping around for different things. So with the simple cracker and that poke, I think that would go together really, really nicely.
And we have a couple
questions. Questions that you folks might have.
Perfect. So Linda wants to know, how long can tofu poke keep?
That's a good question. It's not really going to spoil on you. What you want to think about is the flavor. You'll start to, it'll dilute in flavor as you store it if it's already mixed. So what I would recommend if you were making tofu poke, or really honestly any poke, make your dressing separately. you don't have to buy the pre-made dressing, but you could make your own and then keep it in a container separately. And then cut your ingredients, keep them separate, sort of like that demonstration platter that I had. And then just mix the amount that you plan to serve at that particular time. But after, a couple hours, you'll start to lose the flavor, and also the color and the presentation starts to break down because of the acidity that's in there and the salt that's in there. So your best bet is to mix it pretty close to service time, but it's not going to spoil on you. And if you were doing that with the tuna or with a fish style poke, you've got a couple days, as long as you make sure that you keep it really nice and cold. So it should be on ice if it's out, or it should be in the refrigerator chilled.
Thank you. And one question is, would we use the wasabi and sriracha mayo if we wanted a creamy style poke? And
Yeah,
how much for the
absolutely.
4 servings for which we have the recipe?
That's why I picked this up, because I was interested in using especially the sriracha one. Now you can make that yourself. If you have sriracha and you have mayo, you don't really need to buy this. You could whip up your own. You could probably even toss it in the bowl together at the same time to make that sort of dressing as you go. So there's lots of different approaches to it, but yeah, that would be your creamy style one.
Great. And then another question, what are the wasabi based seeds that you spoke of?
The wasabi what?
Based seeds
Seeds,
that you
I
spoke
think I
of?
brought them out. I tend to have too many things out because I go to the store and I'm like, oh, I want to use that, or let's use this, or let's talk about that. This is what we have here. It's wasabi sesame seeds. And it comes in a little shaker. Steve, do you know where you got those?
You can get them anywhere, Don Quixote, Marukai.
Yeah, Don Quixote or Mordecai.
Probably even Times.
And it's just a flavored sesame seed. So there's a technique where they'll take probably a wasabi powder, toast it with sesame seeds that imparts the flavor, maybe a little green color, and then you have like a wasabi flavored sesame seed. So there's just so many things out on the market today. It's kind of hard to keep up with them all.
Well, that is the end of the questions that we have in the queue. We are willing to stay on for 15 additional minutes for questions, but while we're waiting for you to put more questions in, we want to go ahead and do our door prizes. Now, last week, I would say the #1 question was, where can I buy the uala leaf seasoning? And so we've decided that for every one of our demonstrations, we will be giving out 3 door prizes. So Daniel, can you tell us what's in the door prize?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll get 3 spice blends. The bottom one is actually a salt. It's a spice blend that we create here. And we have a whole line of them, everything from uala leaf taco seasoning to our Hawaiian salt blend, poultry seasoning, Italian seasoning, and things like that. So you'll get one of these, which is a salt added seasoning. You'll get one of these, which is a salt-free seasoning. We used this one last week. This is our all-purpose seasoning, and it has moringa and garlic, ground up uala leaf, kinehi, seaweed, black pepper, different spices in there. And then this one is a curry seasoning mix. It says for chicken, but I've used it for so many different things. This is created by the Kapiolani's Culinary Innovation Center and Dr. Lauren Tamamoto over there. And based on the recipes from Kusuma Kure, who was a professor at Kapiolani for a number of years and industry chef here on Oahu. So you'll get all 3 of these together. They'll be nicely wrapped with a little ribbon at the top. And yeah, we'd hope that everybody would enjoy them.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to name the winners. The names are a little odd because, of course, everybody's using their handles and not their actual names. So I would like people to know that if I call your name, in order to receive this prize, you need to either email me or call me with your actual real name and information. So the winners are Starry Moon with 2 A's, JB, and Charlotte Shuck. So I'll repeat that: Starry Moon, JB, and Charlotte Shuck. So my phone number and email you should have from having registered, but I'll repeat my phone number: 6003. Please call me by Wednesday if you want this prize. Now we have 7 more questions, Daniel. So the first question is, how do you know when an avocado is ripe and ready to use?
Well, they should be a little soft to the touch. Like these were brought in from someone's tree. Carolyn Yamada, I don't know if you're watching, but thank you. She brought these in, but it was a little early. They came in yesterday and these are rock hard. So they're probably going to need to sit out for a couple days. What you want is just a little bit of softness when you press on them. This one is a little over. I push on it and it's a little bit mushy. I can feel it. So you want it to be a little bit firm, but only give slightly to the touch. And if I opened this one up earlier, and if you've not opened avocados before, it's not tricky, but what we tend to do is hold it like this. We'll take our knife, gently go through to hit the pit, and then we just roll it. We roll it on the knife, and then we twist it, and it should come right off like that. So this one is it's nice on this side, a little bit too soft and overripe on the top. Usually these will probably take a couple days to come to ripeness. It should be all right.
Thank you. One question that's come up several times is whether or not we're recording the session so people can watch it again. Yes, we are. And since we've had so many requests, I'll send out a follow-up email that includes the recording from this session and last week's session for those who want to watch those again. Moving along, the question is, where can we find the kukui nut? And that's from Leslie.
Yeah, we were talking about that today. Actually, these were harvested here on campus. I think they were making a bunch of leis for convocation, so they collected the nuts. And I haven't seen them in the store recently, but I am guessing that you could find them at Whole Foods or Down to Earth. Those would probably be my first options. Foodland Farms, perhaps. Talk to your local produce man or woman, and they should be able to steer you in the right direction for that.
And Carrie wants to know, if she wanted to add ginger to the marinade, how much would you recommend adding or starting with?
Yeah, I would probably look at ginger finely grated or chopped. The same way I'd look at salt or garlic. Very, very strong, very flavorful. So if you add a little too much, it can go and become a little overpowering. So you're better off mincing it up. I would say probably about the same equivalent that you would be adding in terms of salt. It does not take a lot. The other option you could do is like what we did last week with our rice, is where we just cut a long sliver of ginger and we threw it in the sauce and we let it sit. And then maybe after a day, you taste your sauce, see if it has enough ginger flavor. If it doesn't, you can leave it in for another day and then take it out when it imparts the flavor to the level that you want. So that way it's a little bit easier to control than it is just chopping it up and throwing it in. But a little bit of ginger will go a long way.
And Linda wants to know, would furukake be good with tofu poke?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking that, because we were at the store yesterday and I think the shelf had about this many different varieties of furukake blends. And I was like, oh, I wanted to buy a few to bring to show, but I already brought out too much stuff. So yeah, any of those things that are your favorite, even if you like Lowry's garlic salt or seasonal or whatever it is that tastes good to you. The key is to make sure that you just have a fresh ingredient. It's tossed together freshly and served quickly. You don't want something to sit around for a long period of time, like I mentioned earlier. But as long as the ingredients are fresh and you're serving it quickly, then you're in good shape.
And Pat would like to know, can all these ingredients you've been talking about, at least the ones in the bottles and whatnot, can they be purchased online anywhere?
That's a great question. Alice, let me ask my wife. She shops online all the time. I would imagine yes, but you can also buy them at Safeway. We tend to shop at Times here for the Uala Leaf Cafe, but I did not see any pre-made poke dressings at Times. They may have been out when I went yesterday, but I know I've seen them at Safeway, and other supermarkets around the island. But I would imagine, I mean, I think everything is available online today. You can even buy a car and they'll deliver it to your house. Thank you
And
for the question,
Linda
Pat.
wants to know, her grandfather wants to be a chef, but he does not like fish. Do you think he could still go to culinary school?
Well, you know, education is always a good thing, especially if it's something that you're passionate about. But I mean, there are vegetarians and vegans that go through culinary programs and work through the meat fabrication courses and things like that. So absolutely, I highly recommend that people start out though with courses that are based maybe on the life enrichment side. So you can take either a series. We usually do a culinary series that's 4 days or a baking series that's 4 days. And that kind of is your first toe in the water to the industry and what it entails. Because there's a big difference between being a chef and then enjoying cooking and enjoying eating. As you know, the industry right now is in shambles because of COVID-19. And where those of us in the industry are still trying to figure out what's going to happen, where it's going to land. But people will always need to eat. People will always enjoy cooking and sharing with others. So non-credit courses that they have at Kapiolani, there may be some at Leeward once we return to a normal schedule. And then we do offer them here as well. We have a pretty full catalog of fun classes that only cost $45 to spend an afternoon to learn a new technique and kind of determine what works best and what path might work best for you.
Thank you. I think we've gotten to all the questions, although one person did say, could they get all the ingredients? And I'm wondering if that person did not get oh no, I see some people put questions in the chat, but if, we did send out the recipe ahead of time. If you got a confirmation, it was hyperlinked in your confirmation. So please look there, email me if you didn't get it. And then one person did say, the ahi I got was light colored. Other cuts were dark. What should I get?
Well,
I always wonder this too.
The main thing for fish, any product really, again, is freshness. Color and fat content for poke may not be as important as it is for sashimi. So the color won't really matter. What matters is it fresh? Does it not smell? Is it not slimy? Does it taste good to you? So if you're just making sure that you've covered those bases, then you'll be fine with pretty much whatever you pick up.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chef Daniel Swift, and thanks to all of you for listening in. We hope we'll be seeing you next week. Is next week great grains?
We're doing braising.
Braising.
To tender. So I'm excited about that. It's one of my favorite techniques that we'll be starting to use heat. And I'll show you guys how to take items that are traditionally tough, and which means they're less expensive, and then slowly braise them so that they become flavorful and tender at the end. So that's a really great technique to learn. So also if you have questions, feel free to email me, danswift@hawaii.edu. We're here to serve the community, and we're excited and thankful for the opportunity Jackie's provided us and AARP and our other community partners. So many thanks to all of you for joining us. We appreciate it.
I'm coming over to Windward for dinner, by the way.
Yeah, come on. You got about 20 minutes. It'll be done.
Heading over right now.
It'll be done.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.